This is going to be all about fixing the walls in the kitchen, because that needs to happen before the cabinets can go in. I had basically one big piece of drywall to put in, one big patch, and then several little patches to go in. And the big piece had to be cut around 3 of the outlets. But besides that, it was fairly simple and fairly straightforward. Now when cutting drywall, it's actually really easy to score one side, then break the interior plaster along that score line and then cut the other side. And you've got a nice, fairly clean break. With the walls themselves, really the first thing to do is to clean them up to get ready for the plaster. And behind where the upper cabinets used to be, there were sort of all these old bug parts and spider webs and bits of gunk that wouldn't come off with the vacuum, so I had to actually brush that stuff off the wall. That part of the wall was the raw plaster as well. There wasn't any paint on it, like those cabinets were the original kitchen. Now I used plaster that you actually have to mix with water, so it'll actually cure instead of just drying like the drywall mud does. So it's a little bit harder than the mud. The main reason was that I had some big spaces to fill, and the plaster that actually cures fills big voids a lot better because it doesn't shrink as much as the mud does. So the first thing to do was to fill all of the seams between the patches that I'd put up. I first filled the seam, and then I covered that with a layer of drywall tape. And then the tape got covered with another layer of plaster, so it's sort of sandwiched within the plaster. There's this clock that we have on the wall in the kitchen, and it's built into the wall and it's wired into the house. So I can't really move it or take it down to do the plastering. And I thought about different things to do with it with the plaster, and I decided to sort of kick the can down the road and just kind of frame it in a square and then plaster around it. And then at some future date, if I think of something or if someone's got a good suggestion for what to do with it, I can do that in the future. Now the first skim coat on the walls. Now this house, like most house, has textured walls, which I really don't like. I would much rather have a smooth wall, so I plastered over the texture on the whole wall. One of the reasons is that you can patch a smooth wall. It's really hard to match a texture and not make it look like a patch. So when I've made a patch in a wall, I usually smooth out the whole wall. I'm not really the best plasterer in the world, so I still need to sand between my coats of plaster. So I can do it well enough to where sanding will get it smooth, but not well enough to where I don't have to sand. The plastering is relaxing. Now for the final coat, I mix the plaster up a little thinner, which will help get that nice smooth final finish on the wall. So really the sanding takes down the bumps or the positives, and the plastering fills in the voids, and you sort of keep doing that process over and over again until the wall looks good enough. Now the far wall, the wall that's sort of parallel with the camera, we've been thinking about doing a color on instead of just white. But we thought we'd put the kitchen in so we could kind of see the colors and how they're working together to kind of pick a color for that wall. Where our fear was we would pick something we think would work and we'd liked, and then we put everything in, it's like, oh, that doesn't really work. So white's sort of the fallback and will work, but we may do a color on that wall as well. Then it was time for painting. It really seems like they changed. Did you make the thing smaller now? The roller size with the roller handle, because the roller I got just was really tight and getting into the handle, but it worked with a hammer. So I did 2 coats of the same white that we have in the rest of the house. And so for a lot of time and work, we went from this to this. Thanks for watching.